So the reread is done. Now it's time to go over to Goodreads.com and check out some 1-star reviews of The Dead Zone, my favourite Stephen King book. Surely there aren't any 1-star reviews on there, right? Surely. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson and this is the place where I talk to you about all things Stephen King. Now in this video, it's kind of the bonus part to my reread of Stephen King. I'm doing a chronological reread, and every time I read a book, I then go over to Goodreads.com and check out some 1-star reviews of King, mainly because I'm curious to see what people who are not quite as much of a fan of Stephen King as I am think about particular books. So it's nice to just go on, pick a few of them at random, read out some of their reviews, offer some thoughts on it, and then to round it off, to give us a bit of balance, I always end with a 5-star review from Goodreads as well. And this time we're talking about The Dead Zone, my favourite Stephen King book, and one that I finished my reread of, which you can see my journey through in my last video. And there's a big train going past. Train! It's still going past. Train! Obviously, the moment I start recording, the longest train in the world goes past. I know you probably can't even hear it, but it's really distracting. And hey, if you're a member of this channel, you get to use one of the train emojis at this point. It's still going. Train! Like, come on, trying to record a video here. Okay, the train is done. Right, so this is where I do 1-star reviews from Goodreads.com of the book that I've just read on my reread. My most recent one is The Dead Zone. Oh, I'm losing all trail of thought. Let's do a couple of quick plugs and then I'll try and get this back on track. So, 3 very quick things to plug. My range of Stephen King themed band shirts, which you can find a link to in the description. My own collection of short stories, Once More Around the Sun, has won quite a few awards now, which is strange, but that's nice. And links in the description. And if you like what I'm doing here, you can become a viewer. No, you can become a constant viewer. Ah, the train has just completely thrown me. You can become a member of this page, become a constant viewer. Get extra special content, fun emojis to do with trains, all of that kind of stuff. Links in the description, blah, blah, blah. Let's try and compose and carry on, okay? Boom. Right, so this is 1-star reviews of The Dead Zone. I'm literally just going to go over to Goodreads, pick out some 1-star reviews, wrap up with a 5-star review, and see what people on there have to say about my favourite book. And don't forget to let me know what you think of The Dead Zone. Are you a 5-star review like me? Are you a 1-star review like these people who are wrong? Not really, but maybe. Are you a 3-star review? Or what? But let me know. Let me know what you think of The Dead Zone. But otherwise, and let me know what you think of these 1-star reviews as well. Sometimes they have a point. You never know. Let's jump into it, shall we? Here are some 1-star reviews of The Dead Zone. Okay, got the laptop onto Goodreads.com for The Dead Zone. So The Dead Zone comes in with a rating average of 3.97 out of 5. That is based out of 234,645 ratings and 7,511 reviews. Now, when you filter it down to 1 star, that accounts for just 1% of this stuff. 2,505 ratings or reviews come in at the 1-star category. So let's go through them, shall we? So the top rated 1-star review. Weira, 1.25 stars, did not finish at 89%. The Dead Zone is my least favourite Stephen King novel so far. I genuinely didn't like it at best, really hated it at worst. I thought it was boring, incomprehensive and bland. The main story centres around, but spelt incorrectly, around Johnny Smith, your average Yahoo, who happens to get himself in an accident and after 4.5 years in a coma wakes up to find himself being a seer. Interesting enough setup. Unfortunately, the book becomes a mess after these first chapters. First, I'd like to challenge myself to find one element of this story that I actually enjoyed. After all, I did give it a 0.25 star bonus, right? The one okay segment of the book is the series of events leading up to the accident. I thoroughly enjoyed Johnny and Sarah, the ice skating, another train. The ice skating in the first chapter transported me to my memories of ice skating. King did something that I didn't see in his works yet. He made it fairy tale-like just for a few paragraphs and it was magical. Heck, even the first chapter after the accident that follows Sarah and his family getting used to the fact that Johnny is hurt was good. I wish I could say more good about The Dead Zone, but I can't. The question this book poses is, if you could go back in time and kill Hitler, would you? For a few brief scenes about a man named Greg Stilson who was running for president. Well, he's not running for president. He was running the House of Representatives. He is the main antagonist of the story, from what I could tell, and from what I read on the Wikipedia summary at the last 50 pages I didn't read. I mean, each their own, but I figure if you get to 50 pages left on a book, just finish it. Like, yeah. From what I understand, these scenes with him are supposed to be foreshadowing for future events or parallels. I think if King played this part up, I would have enjoyed this more. Well, you should have read it all then. Instead, you get a side plot about a serial killer, a side plot about a kid who can't read, a whole bunch of King trying to add depth to Johnny while maintaining him as a good, innocent type guy. Kind of like his character Stu Redman from The Stand, but not at all like Stu Redman. No, because Stu Redman is an awful character. It was so pointless in capital letters. At some point, I just gave up getting excited when a new conflict came up because I knew it would be solved in 20 pages. Other than subtle political undertones, I'd say this book is pretty useless, to me at least. Well, that's a shame, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, obviously I wholeheartedly disagree with that review, and like I say, if you're that close to the end, just read to the end. Anyway, Book Girl on Goodreads, 1 star. So boring. As is often the case with Stephen King, the idea behind this is compelling. The story just needed about half the content edited out. No. Valerie, 1 star. Trigger warning. Dog gets kicked to death. Yep. I tried to keep reading, but the book felt disjointed to me, and I couldn't get past the dog being killed. Fair enough. Mark this as a did not finish as well. Yeah, I get that. Robin, 1 star. This book didn't do much for me, and I'm usually a big fan of the author. He's had a decent premise, guy with psychic powers solves murders, and then it just gets cluttered up with lots of other things. The book would have been fine at half the length, with much less of the angst. The secondary plot with Johnny following the politician seems like it belongs in a different book, and desperately needs to be better written. I was with the book up until then, and then it just lost me. I ended up putting it to the side for months before actually finishing it. Doing so didn't give me as much satisfaction as I had hoped. So that's interesting that they feel like the Greg Stilson stuff is like a secondary plot. Whereas for me, the whole point of the book is we get Johnny and Greg at the start. We sort of set the tone for them. And then we see the 5-7 years of key story, but it's always coming back to Johnny and Greg because they are the main plot. And all of the solving murders and stuff are the side plots. It's interesting that, like, in the previous 1 star review, the side stuff was bothering them. This time, it's the main story that's bothering them. Interesting. I'd never really considered that. Right. Beth White. Unfortunately, my first Stephen King read is also one of the few books I have ever been unable to finish. Another did not finish. This is a review of the audiobook narrated by James Franco. With a slow start and monotonous narration, I was pleasantly surprised to hear James Franco change his voice so drastically to make the creepy elements of the book dramatically more so due to the contrast to the normal droning of his voice. At this point in the book, however, my pleasant surprise only goes as far as the narration. Midway through the book, the horrific details of the attacks of the serial killer were beyond what I could cope with in a book written for entertainment. Gruesome rape scenes are one thing. Those alone are horrific enough, and something I struggled to read. Involving children and the level of graphic detail King goes into too far. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, again, like, contextually in the 70s, it was maybe not seen quite in that light, and probably still horrific, but yeah, making Dodd's last victim a 9-year-old girl is pretty bleak. But yeah, very disappointed in what looked on the surface to be a great read. 1 star from me. Shame. Mitchell Godin says, Stephen, you the best writer ever, but this book was straight up terrible. Instead of adding crappy romances and strange spontaneous serial murder plot lines to a 400-page book, you should introduce the main source of conflict before I'm on page 330. Okay, yeah, kind of impatient there. Again, I think the beauty of it is that we see the two characters, and then the whole question is like, how are these going to come together? And eventually we worm our way there. Eric, better than some other books. I can't name any of them, but I'm sure they exist. Rude. John Funk. One of the worst books I've ever read. Had to force myself to finish it. Okay. And lastly for these 1-star reviews, this is a long one. Stephen John. I have never in my life did not finish a book, but, and this hurts to say, I came really close with this. I need to preface and say that it was a good book. There was just nothing in here for me. Okay, fair enough. I'm trying to become more of a constant reader of Stephen King and decided to go as far back to the beginning as I could. That being said, I absolutely love his newer stuff, so I think switching back to his roots was a sudden change I was not fully prepared for. The book was very slow. I disagree with that, and has the classic King level of depth and detail. I was uninterested in the politics included within, and wished it focused more on Johnny and his visions. Okay? Another aspect that threw me off was simply this book was not scary. No, it's more of a drama. No, the title like The Dead Zone, I went to expecting some gore and terror, none of which are included in this novel. Okay, I mean, The Dead Zone, it is, explain what that is, but fine. I went completely blind to the story as I usually do with all my reads and was utterly confused to find out this book was more crime mystery thriller with some supernatural element than horror. Shame on me for not doing my research, I guess. That being said, the plot was somewhat disjointed in my opinion. Overall, I liked the first half of the novel when Johnny is first emerging from his comatose state and discovering his potential gift, but I think it really burned out after that. Okay, fair enough. Those are some 1-star reviews. You've seen what I thought of them, but let me know what you thought of those 1-star reviews. But before we go, let's pull up a 5-star review, shall we? So, there are 75,830 reviews and ratings of The Dead Zone with a 5-star one, including a couple from me. That's 32% of the overall count. So, let's see. Top rated 5-star review comes from Matthew. This was my second time in The Dead Zone. I remember the first time fondly as this is the only one of 2 Stephen King books I read in one sitting. Wow. The first time was in the late 1990s at an all-night coffee shop in Cincinnati. I read until the sun came up, fueled on caffeine and the enthralling words of the master of horror himself. I suppose knowing that I read it in one sitting says a lot about what I thought about it. I loved it. It blew me away. It was creepy, heart-wrenching, introspective, speculative, terrifying, thought-provoking, and on and on and on. I just knew I had to read it again now to see if I still felt the same. And I do. I definitely do. I feel like Matthew and I could be great friends. I think many people recommend Carrie or The Shining to people just starting King. I rarely hear The Dead Zone. But to me, this would be a fantastic place to start. It is not too long to be daunting, like It or The Stand. It does not involve the potential commitment to the series like the Dark Tower or Hodges trilogy. I think the story is fairly straightforward and would be easily accessible to many. I've shared this view. I've given this book to people as a, hey, you've never read Stephen King, read this. Also, hoping that I'm not saying too much, I think this story is politically terrifying in the world's current political climate. Yes, indeed. This time around I did the audio. I was skeptical at first because it was James Franco and he usually seems kind of silly to me. I'm guessing he may have been invited to do this audio version because of his involvement with the 1122 miniseries, which I still need to watch. Update, just noticed I said I still need to watch this, but I did in 2019 and it was great. Okay, cool, thanks. I think James Franco did a great job narrating this book and I will gladly do other books in the future narrated by him. You asked me what King book I recommend. This is it. You haven't read it yet? Why not? Yes, Matthew. Yes, virtual high five to Matthew there. There we go. What do you think of Matthew's 5-star review? Do let me know. So there we go then. Some 1-star reviews of The Dead Zone done. And the reread of The Dead Zone is done. Which means the 70s are done on my chronological reread. So, before I pick up Firestarter and go into the 80s, I reckon probably time to do a ranking of the 70s based on my reread experience. So what I'm going to do in my next video is exactly that. I'm going to rank the Stephen King 70s books and I'm going to compare it to how I ranked them in my overall entire Stephen King ranking from a couple of years ago. Will any of them move around? I don't know. We'll find out together on that video. But thank you for watching this. Do check out other things in the description. We managed to make it through without another train, so that's good. And happy reading. Go and read The Dead Zone. And I will see you soon for a 70s ranking.